Hi everyone, Ramesh here. Welcome to Hibernate one-to-one mapping example with springboot. As we know that Hibernate is one of the popular ORM framework which we can use to map a domain model into a relational database tables. Alright, in this video tutorial we will learn how to define one-to-one relationship between two entities using JPA and Hibernate. We basically create a one-to-one mapping between two classes, user and user profile. And the one-to-one association is bidirectional, that is we can refer to a user profile from the user and vice versa, and we are going to use MySQL database in this example. So basically we create two entities, one is user and another is user profile, and we use JPA annotations to define one-to-one relationship between these two entities. Alright, so look at here the ER diagram. This is the users table and this is user underscore profiles table. User table contains user ID as a primary key, and user underscore profiles table contains user profile underscore ID as a primary key, and users table contains foreign key of user underscore profiles table. So primary key of this table becomes a foreign key in users table here. Alright, so this is a one-to-one bidirectional mapping, and we are going to use add one-to-one annotation on both side, user and user profile, so that we can achieve bidirectional mapping between them. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. Let me switch to the Eclipse STS ID and let's quickly create a Spring Boot project to define one-to-one mapping between these two entities using JPA and Hibernate. Let's get started. I'm in Eclipse STS ID. Let's go ahead and let's create and bootstrap Spring Boot project. Go to the file, new, and then choose Spring Starter project, and this is the Spring Initializer website which is integrated in a Spring Toolsuite ID, and we are going to use Spring Initializer to quickly create and bootstrap our Spring Boot project. So let's go and let's give a name to the project. So I am going to give name as Spring Boot Hibernate one-to-one mapping. Okay, and type Maven, packaging jar, Java version 8, language Java, and group ID give net.javaguides. You can give any group ID that you want, and artifact ID Spring Boot Hibernate one-to-one mapping. So this is our application name, and keep version as it is. Description is demo project for Spring Boot Hibernate one-to-one mapping. Alright, and package as net.javaguides.springboot. So once you are happy with the details, click next, and then keep Spring Boot version as it is, and we are going to use a latest release of Spring Boot as of now, and we are going to use Hibernate. Right, for that let's pick up Spring Data JPA Spring Boot starter dependency. So Spring Data JPA basically we use to define a persistence layer or a DAO layer, and by default internally Spring Data JPA uses Hibernate as a JPA provider. Alright, let's pick this Spring Boot starter dependency, and we are going to use MySQL database. For that let's choose MySQL driver. Alright, so these are two dependencies are enough to create this example. Alright, so once you fill up all the details, then hit finish. So this will create a Spring Boot project in Eclipse STS ID. So before moving further, let's first define MySQL database configuration. So this is a Spring Boot project, and look at here, this is resource folder. Under resource folder you can see application.properties file. So inside this property file we need to define properties for MySQL database. So look at here, these are the properties. So this is the JDBC URL for MySQL database, and demo is our database name, username and password for our MySQL database, and this is the Hibernate dilate for MySQL database, and this is the auto details property. So we use this property to create tables automatically during application startup, and this is the log statement. So basically we want to see the logs that generated by Hibernate during application startup. That we will see once we complete the application. Alright, Now what we'll do, create a database in a MySQL workbench. So let me copy this demo database. And in a MySQL workbench, let's create a statement, create database, and the name of the database is demo. Now let's execute this statement. So this will create a demo database here. So look at here. Alright, now we have done MySQL database setup. So this is our entry point of our Spring Boot project. So let's quickly create a few packages. Right click new and package and name it as entity, and let's go ahead and let's create one more package and let's name it as a repository. Alright, and what we'll do, we'll create a JPA entities now. Let's create a class, name it as user, and let's create one more class and name it as user profile. Alright, and let's go ahead and let's create a enum and let's name it as gender, and let's define male and female fields. Alright, and let's define fields in a user class: private long id, private string name, private string email. Alright, and here private user profile. Alright, and let's go ahead and let's create a getter setter methods to access these private fields. Alright, and then we also create a parameterized constructor, remove id, and then we also create a default constructor. So remember, whenever you create a parameterized constructor, then you have to create a no argument constructor for this JPA entity. Alright, now we have created a class. Let's make this class as a JPA entity. Let's use JPA annotations to make this class as a JPA entity. So we are going to use add entity annotation. So this annotation we use to make this class as a JPA entity, and let's use add table annotation to provide a table details. So here I am going to give a name to the table, so let us say users. You can also provide a schema name here. For example, look at here, you can use schema attribute to define a schema. Alright, and let's define a primary key for our table. So let's use add id annotation to define a primary key, and let's also define a primary key generation strategy. Let's use add generated value annotation, and inside that we are going to use strategy and use identity. Okay, and you can also define a column name for name, field, email, and user profile. So I am going to use add column annotation here. Name equal to name, just copy it, and here give email. Alright, now this part is very important. Here we are defining one-to-one mapping, so use one-to-one annotation here, and then inside we need to define a fetch type. So fetch type, define lazy, so this will load related entity lazily from the database. And again we need to define cascade type, right? So cascade type all. So cascade type all means whenever we update or delete this user object, then the related child class, that is user profile, also getting updated and deleted. Now let's use @join column annotation to provide a foreign key inside this table. So here I am going to use name, so I am going to give name as user profile underscore id. Okay, great. Now we have created a user JPA entity. Now let's go and let's create a JPA user profile entity. So here what we'll do, we'll create again few fields: private long ID, private string phone number, alright, and private string address, private gender, and then gender, and we create private local date. This is a birth date, right? Birth of date. Okay, so let's keep it simple. So now let's create a getter setter methods to access these private fields. Right click source and then select all and generate. Alright, now let's quickly create a parameterized constructor. Right click source and then generate constructor using private fields. Alright, and let's go ahead and let's create no argument constructor. That's it. Alright, let's use a JPA annotations to make this class as a JPA entity class. Let's annotate add entity annotation. Similarly, let's use add table annotation to provide table details, and here let's provide a table name like user profiles. Alright, and let's define a primary key and also define primary key generation strategy. Generation type identity. Okay, and here what we'll do, we again use column annotation to provide column name for this field name, and here define a column name phone underscore number @ column, and define column name as address. So if you don't specify @ column annotation, then by default the name of the column is name of the field. Okay, and here we use @enumerated, and let's define as a string. Okay, and let's use again @ column annotation, and the column name is keep gender, and here also use column annotation, and let's give a column name as birth underscore of underscore date. Great. So this is our user profile JPA entity. Now I have mentioned earlier we are going to define a bidirectional association between user and user profile, right? Now let's go and let's create here a field that is user and user. Now this is a very important part, so notice here I am going to use @1to1 annotation here, and let's again define a patch type as lazy, and define cascade as all, so that whenever this entity will update or persist, then its related entities also get updated and deleted. And here we use one more attribute mapped by, so this is very important. So this will we use basically this attribute on a non-owning side. Okay, and just copy this and paste it here. Alright, so this is our user profile JPA entity. Alright, now let's go and let's create a getter setter methods to access a user field. Alright, so far we have created two JPA entities and we have defined one-to-one mapping between them. Now what we'll do, we quickly create a repositories. Right click new and choose interface, and we define user repository, and this will extend JPA repository, and here provide a user, and this is the long, and let's annotate this interface with at repository annotation. Okay, that's it. Let's import user. This is user repository. Now let's go and let's create one more repository, that is user profile repository. User profile repository, and this extends again a JPA repository, and let's pass user profile here, post argument, and then second is long, and let's annotate this interface with again at repository annotation. Alright, so we have defined two repositories. Now it's time to test our one-to-one mapping. So what we'll do, we'll use command line interface which provides a run method. So we are going to use command line runner interface which provides a run method. So run method runs whenever application starts. Alright, so what we'll do, we'll first inject repositories, private user repository, user repository. Let's inject private user profile repository, user profile repository. Alright, now let's go and let's create a user object. User equals new user, user dot set name, so add a name here, Ramesh, and user dot set email, so provide email as ramesh@gmail.com. Alright, now let's define user profile. Let's create a user profile object. User profile dot set address Pune, user profile dot set birth date, so local date dot of, I am going to define year 1991, month 03 and 24. User profile dot set gender dot male, and then user profile dot set phone number. Let's give any 10-digit number, and then user dot user profile, what else remaining. Okay, now we have user object and user profile object. Now what we'll do, we'll add a reference of user profile to the user object, user profile, and again we need to add user object to the user profile, because this is a bidirectional mapping. So let's add other relations like this. We need to set a user profile object to the user object like this, and we need to set user object to the user profile object like this. Alright, and then what we'll do, we use user repository dot save method, and then we save user object. Okay, now this completes our development. Let's go ahead and let's run the Spring Boot project. So this is our main entry point of our Spring Boot project. Right click, run as Spring Boot app. So look at here, logs on a console. Two tables are created, user underscore profiles and users, and here look at here, insert statement are printed on a console, and one record is inserted in user underscore profiles and another record is inserted in users table. Let's verify the tables in MySQL Workbench. So let me refresh a database in MySQL Workbench. Here look at here, two tables are created, users and user underscore profiles. Let me select statements. So look at here, the single record it is inserted, and this is the foreign key in users table, and this is user underscore profiles table. Alright, so this is a one-to-one mapping between users and user underscore profiles table, and this is a foreign key, and this will maintain a one-to-one mapping. Alright, I hope you understood one-to-one mapping using JPA and Hibernate with Spring Boot project. Alright, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Whenever I will publish such videos, you will get notified.